So, warm welcome also from my side to all of you. Glad to be here again at OpenSlava in Bratislava. I still remember one of my first talks in 2014 I was giving about what is now called the metaverse. At this time, we still called it wearable technologies. You can still find it in the internet. And many of those things we taught at this time came true in the meantime. So let's hear today about generative AI. Generative AI is the hype of 2023. It all started in November 30th, 2022, when OpenAI introduced ChatGPT to the public. And all of a sudden, what before needed a computer science degree or at least programming skills to access the technology was in the hands of everybody through a simple chat-like interface with which everybody could explore the technology and the power it has. Consequently, usage skyrocketed, reaching already 100 million users just a few weeks later in January 2023, which made it the fastest growing consumer application in history. So maybe let's have a show of hands here in the room. Who already has used ChatGPT or similar generative AI technology? Please raise your hand. Okay, that was kind of expected, yeah? So the 100 million need to come somewhere. But there were a few left that did not raise their hand, and I expect in 1 year from now, every hand will go up. Because in the meantime, large companies like, for example, Microsoft or Red Hat, building those technologies into their products. And in the future, if you just use Excel or if you do a Bing search, the technology will be working in behind, and you might not even notice you're interacting with it. So, looking at the most recent release of OpenAI. Don't know if all of you have observed it. In September 25th, they raised the latest version, and they made the claim that ChatGPT now has the power to see, hear, and speak. So let's watch how this looks in action. So this brings it even to the next level. What has started as large language models being able to process written language now evolves into large multimodal models, so LMMs instead of LLMs. So a little bit of tongue breaker here. And with that, it comes even closer to us as humans, communicating with us in all the different senses that how we express ourselves, and by that becoming even more powerful. So with that, welcome to the era of generative AI, and welcome to my keynote about the topic. I am Matthias Ziegler, and I am responsible for technology incubation globally at Accenture, where we build the next generation of businesses for our company and for our clients. In my team, we incubated technologies in the past like cloud computing, big data, artificial intelligence, or latest, the metaverse. And nowadays, we are looking at fields like next generation computing, next generation robotics, space innovation, and bioinnovation. And what all those fields have in common, that they will be heavily impacted and making use of generative AI as well. So to better understand the impact and importance of this, let's look back 540 million years into the history of Earth. Who knows what has happened at that time on Earth? Okay, maybe not in the IT faculty. So at this time, what happened was the Cambrian explosion, when suddenly all the human life forms we now know on Earth, in a very short time, emerged in a burst of increasing complexity and increasing life forms. And what we see now, today, in the field of artificial intelligence, I like to compare to what happened there. We have this Cambrian explosion in the field of AI at the moment, based on those foundation models, which are the foundations of generative AI. Suddenly, many applications and applications field arise by this trigger point of these very large language models now being able to be used in very broad fields. And I would also like to cite Roy Amara, a famous scientist and futurist in North America here, who once said, "We tend to overestimate the effect of a technology on the short term and underestimate the effect in the long run." I think we're in such a state right now with Genai. It's all the hype. We all expect what already will work today and this year. And maybe we over-exaggerate a bit on that. But on the longer run, we see how fast and exponential this technology is growing. In a few years, in 5 to 10 years, this will be truly transformational. And let me show you a few examples of how that already looks like and what topics we're already talking about with our clients. First, how did we get there? And maybe not looking back 550 million years, but maybe just the last 25. So we started the journey with machine learning in the 2000s. And I compared it a bit with how a child is growing up. So we made the first baby steps in the 2000s with machine learning, where the focus was on analytics and based on that predicting some certain outcomes or being able to classify certain results. This was like teaching a child to recognize colors or shapes. And it was a big step at that time. But then with deep learning in the 2010s, we turned more towards vision and towards speech recognition. So these deeper networks, more complicated networks were able to reach more human-like ways of interaction, higher levels of understanding. But still at that time, AI was not yet able to generate unique content. This arose in the 2020s, the era of generative AI that we are now in, that the models grew even larger, and with that have the abilities to master language, and you see also master multiple inputs and even make connections between those inputs. We dive a bit deeper into that. So what actually is generative AI? Similarly to the previous models, it still ingests data, but the difference is it's much more data. And I say much more, it's billions. It's almost the complete internet that they're ingesting in such a deep learning neural network. And it's not just text. It's images, it's speech, audio, video, and all of that into a single model. And what emerged out of that is that suddenly capabilities arose out of those new models that we have not explicitly trained for. In the past, when we did our first steps with machine learning, we were happy if it could recognize images of the 26 letters of the alphabet, and we had a good recognition rate. But this was explicitly trained for. Now we are feeding in all those amounts of data, and when I say we, it's the whole technology community. It's companies like OpenAI, like Microsoft and Google, training those huge foundation models, which takes millions of computer time. So it's really heavy to compute. But then when you have that foundation model on top, you can use it and build additional applications on top of it very easily. And those applications are able to generate output. Output in the form of text, for example. And also, it's still just statistical correlations. Based on all the things it has ingested from the internet, it understands what character statistically should follow another character, so to form a meaningful word, and how to put words together to form a sentence, and a sentence, multiple sentences to form an essay that makes sense to us as humans, just from what it has read from the internet. And similarly with code, which just is a special application, programming is just putting semantically and syntactically correct words together. It's especially excellent at that. And in our company, almost no programmer anymore works with looking up if he stumbles over a bug on Stack Overflow to find out how to solve it. He just types it into ChatGPT and it writes out a correct phrase. And well, I tried it out. Sometimes it produces still bugs because it finds bugs on the internet. But then you say, well, could you please fix the bug? And in the next prompt, in the next answer, it comes up with the correct code. That's really interesting. And here it goes for all the other technologies like audio, speech, video, 3D models, images and photos. Images, it just puts together pixel by pixel a picture and out comes something meaningful for us as humans. Let's look at some examples, how all this can explored and what it means for us, and what it changes for us, and how, first of all, how it is changing us and how we perceive reality. I start here with this actually Genai generated image of a chessboard. And you might remember in 1996 when IBM's Deep Blue first time beat chess champion at that time, Garry Kasparov, in chess. It was the first ever. It took 20 years until Google's DeepMind AlphaGo was able to beat the European champion Han Fui of Go in a Go game. So why took it so long and what is the difference? Chess is a game with very clear rules. This, if you remember the history in the 2000s, we as humans, we were teaching the AI how to do it, programming the rules. With AlphaGo, the game turned around. AlphaGo was learning by itself, by watching many games played by masters. But when it was ready with that, it was starting playing against itself. And by that, discovering new strategies that worked. And actually found out new ways of playing Go that even the best masters, human masters in the world, were surprised to see. So what has turned around is that now the AI starts becoming the teacher, opening up new white spots for us that we can discover and learn from. And that is very powerful, and we see that and applications of that in many fields. For example, if you look at creating innovation, ideating about something, for example, in the field of engineering, which is also taught here. So the path of yesterday was, well, bringing all the best people in a room, have a lot of post-its, hopefully a good moderator, and then you brainstorm and try to create a lot of ideas, and hopefully something useful comes out of it. And it heavily depends on the people in the room and the knowledge and background that they have. Nowadays, you could imagine, couldn't a Genai, a large language or foundation model that has ingested almost everything you could know about on the internet. Could that not be a good advisor for such an ideation session? Students and researchers from the Technical University of Delft put it to the test just in June this year. They wanted to create a new useful robot, and they added ChatGPT to the team and engaged with it, asking it questions for suggestions. And they were actually surprised and pleased by the outcomes, by the useful suggestions that were coming out of querying and interacting with the generative AI. For example, suggesting what kind of gripper would be best used out of silicone or rubber so that you don't bruise the fruit, the tomato, while picking it. So they came out with the proposal of a tomato picking robot, which actually also was an idea generated out of the ChatGPT. And it's even so specific with like that a dynamical motor is the best choice for this type of robot to move it forward. So this is really impressing and is a goalpost towards how many types of work will be impacted and will be able to perform better, faster, or with higher quality in the future, leveraging Genai as a partner. So how does this impact technologies? Looking into autonomous technology, or for example, also robotics, which I have colleagues from my team here in the room where you can listen to deeper dives on the topic. So immediately when our Accenture Tech Vision came out this year in January, highlighting the importance of generative AI, I immediately reached out to my team saying, well, let's look into and create our point of view. What does this mean for your field for robotics? And actually we found plenty of applications. It already starts with robots actually are complex systems of systems that need to be programmed. And I already explained that programming is a task where GenAI excels to support humans. But then it also goes when the robot operates itself, for example, when it needs to find a way and there's an obstacle, it needs to replan. So motion planning is a field where you can also better train the robot with, for example, images generated by GenAI. Or when you want to expand with robots into public spaces, which is our focus of research, to how do you interact with humans? Again, those capabilities, GenAI and its language understanding capabilities, its image interpretation capabilities come in very handy to help the robot understand and derive the right action out of what it sees, out of what it hears a human say, and it even can create a meaningful response that it can then give back to the human to either explain what it currently wants to do or ask for something or trigger an action. And it goes even further with autonomous technologies. For example, autonomous cars are also a hype topic. Many companies are striving to achieve that autonomy. Some companies in the world even try to do it vision only. And the fanboys amongst you know which company I refer to. Others use a multitude of sensors. But if you want to do it vision only, actually one big hurdle is that for the seldom situations, like a child running in front of the car or a ball is rolling on the street and deriving from that probably a child is running after that and you should brake already. These are situations that are not in the typical training data. So you need to generate training data for those situations to make the autonomous vehicle aware of it and be able to react it rightly. And so you can hear one talk today from my colleague, team member Fabien Papleux, about how we use those technologies to generate vast amounts of data to better train autonomous technologies like cars to do better image recognition. And then behind this nice purple screen, a nice video is waiting for you about how we think this can transform the way how customer service is delivered. Customer service to humans, but by AI, and almost every company in some way serves customers, even if it's a consumer company or if it's a business company. And so let's roll the video to see how that could look like.
Welcome to Globo Insurance. How can I help you?
Hi, I'm Emmanuel from Zurich. I'm a customer of yours and I have a problem. I've lost one of the keys to the apartment complex that I live in, and because this apartment complex has an overall managed key system, that's a real problem for me. So those keys are very expensive to replace, and I wanted to see if my insurance with you covers such a case.
Sure, Emmanuel. Let me first authenticate you, and then let's see how we can help. Can you give me your address, please?
Yeah, my address is Spitalgasse 4 in Zurich.
Okay, thank you. I believe I have found you. To authenticate you, can you please enter your PIN on the pop-up on your mobile phone?
Yeah, sure. Let me see. Done.
Great. So, you lost an apartment key, you said. Was this the key for your home apartment at the address that you mentioned, Spitalgasse 4?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, let me quickly check the policy of your liability insurance. Yes. Of course, this is covered up to 3,000 Swiss francs per case, and I can also see you had no claim in the last 24 months. Shall I log a corresponding case for you right away?
Wow, yeah, so that was really fast. And this is great news. Thank you so much. Yes, please. I would like to get the key replaced right away. And it's really great that you can help me.
Okay. I created the corresponding entry in our system. You have a corresponding email in your inbox already, with the reference and further details. We also have a specialized service company in your area that we are partnering with to replace keys. Would you like me to open a case and request for you in parallel?
Yes, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Please do that.
No problem. Is there anything else we in Globo Insurance can do for you today?
No, that's all good for now.
Okay. Thank you for calling Globo Insurance. We are there for you when you are in need. Have a good day.
Bye.
So, while this is still a vision that we use to engage with a client to show how this can look like in the future, all those, and it does not yet work in total, but all the different pieces that you saw, the technologies that are explored, the puzzle pieces to exist. So we just need to stitch it together. And we're already talking to multiple clients, engaging in first projects to bring that vision to life. So look at some further topics. How do you believe this could change our work? And let's use one example. We have Ben here. Ben is a cancer scientist, a researcher trying to find new medicines against cancer in his company. How could Genai impact his work? Well, already while he is sipping on his morning coffee at home, he gets read out a summary of just the latest research papers coming out in the past few days. So he's not needing to go to the library, search for all of those, find the ones relevant for him, and so on. He just gets it delivered and summarized. So summarizing is one of the key capabilities Genai can do. Then when he comes into his research lab, instead of operating a lot of monotone tasks on his cultures that he has set up, this is done already by an automation that's also driven by AI that can interpret, for example, how cultures have been growing, what medicines have been having which effect. So he uses the time instead to work with his team and do a brainstorming sessions on the outcomes, and adding a GenAI assistant, like we heard in the previous examples, to the conversation to come up with better results. And in the afternoon, they are discussing the results with the team, And a Genai is listening to the conversation, creating automatically a summary of that that he then can send to his professor for the outcomes and for further guidance. These are all capabilities that exist today in pieces. And so, in the early afternoon, he already goes home to have a nice dinner with his girlfriend. So that's the most strong outcome because, well, I need to admit, at the time when I was studying, I had a girlfriend at Max Planck Institute, and she was never home for dinner. So let me close all those examples of the positive impacts Genai may have with a personal story from at home. Well, I have 3 daughters. My first daughter is now stepping into my footsteps, studying computer science. And certainly when this topic arose, we at the kitchen table at home and over dinner discussed, well, what is the impact? What can it do? What does it mean for you and for your studies? And my youngest daughter, still in school, was carefully listening. Next day, my wife came into her room looking what she was doing for her homework. She was hiding something at the laptop. And she said, "Oh, what are you doing there?" She already had created an OpenAI account and was finding out how it was much easier to do her German and English classes homework with a little help. So most of the people here in the room is the generation that grew up with not knowing how it is to live without a smartphone and without instant access every time, always on to the internet. There's an app for that generation. The generation of my younger daughter or the child that grow up now, they will live up in a world where you always have an assistant at hand with which you can communicate just in your language, which you can show pictures, and which gives you responses. And I will call that, there's a chat for that generation. So that's the twist here. And they will just expect that those things also function in the business life when they enter it. So after having heard all those positive aspects and impacts, certainly we can't end this presentation without also looking at potential negative impacts this technology might have, as every technology. After all, it's just a tool. And like a knife in the hands of a human, you can either cut your vegetables and make a nice dinner for your family and friends, or you can stab somebody else in the back. It's the same, unfortunately, with generative AI. Those power in the wrong hands and with the wrong intention can also be abused. More easily than ever, you can create texts that nobody can find out anymore if they are from a human or not. You can create images like this one that we just generated with Midjourney of a monster fighting a celebrity LeBron James at McDonald's in Bratislava. And it looks quite authentic. Luckily, we know monsters don't exist. But for other circumstances where we don't know the truth, this is much more difficult to differentiate. And that's why we need new norms. There's a norm for humans that you don't stab somebody in the back. And we need to develop similar norms for how to use Genai and that they come deeply into our habits, that we follow those and don't misuse it. And certainly we also, if those misuses happen, we need to find governance how to deal with it. And there's a talk, if you want to go more deeply into that, listen to Jennifer Bettinger from my team talking about how to responsibly use the technology. So let me close with one sentence summarizing the last 30 minutes. With Genai, we, and I mean all of us, will change our lives forever. It's up to us how.